What up? What up? We are live. 1, 2. Going to be doing some one-on-ones today. I wanted to try this out. It's not too often that my followers get to go one-on-one with me. So, yeah, I thought we'd try this out today. When you get into the room, please hit the like button. We're going to be working through a bunch of different topics today. There'll be some suggested topics, but you can drop a topic or a question in the chat, and we will answer it. Josa, welcome. We're also playing with the algorithm a bit today, just to see what we have to do to get larger audiences in here. YouTube's already culled all of the inactive accounts on our YouTube channel, so we've been given some advice to just play with the algorithm, play with the titles of live streams, just to see if we can attract some larger audiences. I'm gonna be playing some Civ 6 while we hang out as well. We're gonna continue on with our game. Portugal, we are still pushing Portugal, but I think we've taken 2 cities, but I think we've pushed a little too far, spread ourselves a little too thin. So we're gonna lose this one city up here, Lyria. We had some barbarian issues up in the north here by our capital. So we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll play some games while we're hanging out. Aaron, how's it going, brother? I'm not sure if Aaron can hear me. Maybe he can. Check. I'm also having some soup. Hey, man.
I was muted.
Well, how's your day so far?
How's your day so far?
Pretty good. I was out on the street promoting Celebration of Science and Reason tour, and just having some lunch here. And it's a beautiful day here in Vancouver. Playing a little bit of Civ while we chat. So yeah.
You know how much I would love to be in your shoes.
Yeah. What is your? Because I know you're a truck driver. What's your dream gig?
Well, my dream gig is to be a performing classical pianist.
Yeah.
That shit ain't gonna happen. So.
Right. What is that? When did you stop pursuing that? Like when you started, like, because
when I started driving a truck.
Okay, you started driving a truck, but you was it kind of a money thing where you wanted to drive full time as opposed to like part time, and then maybe pursue your career as a pianist part time?
No, it was holy shit, I have $40,000 of student loan debt that I need to pay off somehow. Where can I find a job that doesn't require me living in a cardboard box?
Right.
Type situation. That's why I do this job. It pays well, and I can pay off my student loans at the same time.
Yeah, I hear that, man.
But unfortunately, it takes up most of my life.
Yeah, I still have a bit left to pay off on my student loan as well.
God damn.
I play. I live quite meekly. But
sure.
I have a car that works. I have a 2-bedroom place that I rent. And
you and I live very alike.
Yeah, man. I would probably guess that you're wealthier than I am as a truck driver.
Wow.
But I think part of this journey is figuring out like what we want to do with our limited time here, right?
Trust me, if I had it my way, I'd be doing something much more constructive than wasting my life driving a goddamn truck. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because some people would think that is very constructive. Like, I think a lot of us grow up, being told you got to find a good job that's going to contribute to society. And you've found that. And then we're told, like, you got to find, you should be, generally, you should probably be married at around this age and have, a couple kids, preferably a boy and a girl,
Well, you know what I say to those people? Go fuck yourself. That's what I say to those people.
Mm.
I'm 28 years old and I have no intentions of getting married, and I'm certainly not having kids.
Right.
That shit ain't gonna happen. The American dream has been dead since about 1971. Okay?
Mm.
That's probably an exaggeration, but you get the idea.
What do you think happened there?
Motherfuckers got greedy. Shit didn't keep up with inflation.
Mm.
Really not hard.
Do you feel behind? Like, you're a full-time truck driver. Do you feel behind in life, or do you feel like from a resource perspective, you're kind of, you don't necessarily feel behind, but you feel like you're kind of keeping up with everyone?
I feel like I'm wasting my life. That's what I feel like.
And
I feel like my time isn't being best spent. Now, that might be arrogant to say, but I do have a couple brain cells. I mean, I'd like to put them to better use than fucking this bullshit.
Right. Well, I mean, one thing, and you and I have like touched on it a little bit, but one of the ways you could go about doing this is like, having your own program at Pangburn, but also like eventually you could have your own, kind of your own radio program as you're driving, and then maybe eventually you would get to a point where it's like, oh, I can actually have a studio where I have a piano there, play piano once in a while, and talk to people, because I think you're like a really talented conversationalist.
We'll see what the future holds.
Yeah. There's just I mean, I think we are lucky in the part of the world that we live in where literally we could just decide, tomorrow to just do something else, right?
Well, some of us aren't that fortunate. Some of us have medical conditions that make it a pretty foolish idea to choose to do something else.
I hear you.
Now, granted, you're in Canada where there's universal health care. Well, sadly, we don't have that here in the States.
And I feel really lucky to live in Canada under the healthcare system that we have. And, with my struggles through clinical depression and all of the care I've received without having this huge bill stacked up on me, I think that's been... I think I'm very lucky. Maybe I would be dead by now if I didn't have access to the healthcare that I have access to here in Canada.
Well, if I chose to quit my job to go pursue my dream, my cancer would basically come back and kill me. So, because I wouldn't be able to take the treatments anymore without having to pay 5 figures for them every goddamn time. By the way, there's a question I've been meaning to ask you.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm generalizing a bit. What the fuck does a Canadian have to be depressed about?
Well, like if you're talking about the depression that I do not suffer from, which would be like environmental depression, which would include like your family unit, the people around you, all aspects of your environment. Like there might be something there that's causing you to be depressed, but mine's more of mine's a neurological just byproduct of the combined genetics of my parents. So that's, I have to be medicated for that. But yeah, I mean, but from the other perspective, like I love everything about my life. Like I just, I'm not
to you.
I'm not upset about anything in my life. I love it. I have a work that I adore, and and people around me that I adore. So it's it's a great
Consider
it's a
yourself
great life.
lucky.
Yeah, no, I do, and I get reminded all the time by information, news articles, and things that I see coming from around the world. Not just during the obvious Ukraine Russia war, but just generally what's happening around the world, and the quality of life that a lot of people have is just so low. So,
Well, compared to what?
well, I would
First
say
world living?
sure, yeah, sure.
Well, who says first world living is the best way to do things?
Well, I'm saying by a metric of well-being, the
Oh,
standard. Like, I talk to a lot of people in my philosophical coaching practice that they come to me like trying to get medical advice from me, and I'm like, no, I'm not here to give medical advice. You should talk to your doctor. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you should talk to your family doctor, being the ignorant piece of shit that I am to even suggest that, someone over in a really impoverished part of, Central Africa has access to such a thing.
right.
And then they're like, no, I have to do this. They try to explain to me, I have to do this myself. So any advice you can give me. So it's like you give them like access to, or you find some like doctor, like family doctor YouTubers that give really useful information. And some people will be like, oh, you should send them to scientific journals. Well, what the fuck's that going to do for the person who's like, I'm literally suffering and I haven't really been quote unquote blessed with a great education. So when I read these journals, it just looks like gobbledygook to me. So,
Well, thing is, that 'cause when I've told people how much I hate my life, they're like, "Oh, you're so ungrateful. You're so ungrateful." First of all, asshole, I didn't ask to be born. Okay, I know no one does, but
yeah,
you're not going to use that ungrateful bullshit against me. I did not ask to be born in the conditions I was in. All right.
right.
Second of all, like I've said many times on, live chats and shit, watching that video, the top 10 worst places to live in America, it's like, look at these people. They have to like make houses out of pallets and they have no running water and no electricity. And I'm sitting there going, I mean, maybe from the standpoint of a first world country, that's not great, but you realize there was a point in time when all human beings lived like that, right?
Yeah.
And they were just fine with it.
And I take that point. Like, I seriously do. Like, there's something about living,
A simple life.
yeah, man. Like, I have this desire. This desire creeps up on me sometimes to, go back and live in the mountains where I grew up, right? And have a very modest piece of land and a little home there, and I can go back to building fires to keep me warm, collecting firewood, hunting, fishing, canning my gardened goods, all of that stuff. That is something, and I don't think it's about like, I don't think it's about like underappreciating the life I'm living right now, or the situation I've found myself in, but just by sheer chance and luck. But there's something to be said about, like, don't lose something that is more primitive is not necessarily bad, right?
Preaching to the choir.
I like.
There's upsides to both lifestyles.
Like the pleasure derived, when I examine my own pleasure hierarchy, the pleasure derived from fishing in complete silence. Like, literally the only thing I hear, my ears are so tuned to the surface of the water. The only thing I hear is when a rainbow trout breaches the top of the water or jumps out in the middle of the lake. And I'm like, damn, I can't wait to catch that one. Like that to me, or sitting there in the bush, hearing branches snap where the herd of elk might be walking through. Like, that stuff, I feel as I get older, that stuff weighs heavier on my heart, you know?
If you've got shit weighing on your heart, you've got serious health problems, buddy. I cannot stand people who talk, oh, the heart this and the heart that. Motherfucker, the heart pumps blood, okay?
Yeah, but
chill.
You understand people are using it as a metaphor.
I know, but you understand, I still fucking hate it.
Yeah.
We give the brain so little credit, and it's just, now, to be fair, it's hard for someone who's spent their entire life in a so-called modern civilization to be able to fathom how, say, the North Centennialese, who live that old school, and when I say old school, I mean tribe life. Like, what the fuck do they do all day? Well, yeah, it would be hard for someone like me to wonder what people who rough it do all day. Now, me personally, I spend most of my time alone. So, but I'm not necessarily suggesting that the people who live in that very, very, like, tribe-esque style lifestyle necessarily have to go about it alone. I mean, if that one movie with that one guy who made a friend out of a volleyball taught us anything, is that humans tend to not do the greatest on their own. I mean, it can be done, but with us being a social species, we do tend to work better, in groups.
Sure.
So the boredom that would ensue of having to live like on an island by yourself would be devastating.
Yeah.
But if you've got 10, 12 other people there, well, all of a sudden it's not quite so boring anymore now, is it?
Yeah. We do, yeah, and I mean, apes tend to be very familial. We do have examples of apes that aren't so much, with orangutans and it's. I do think that some people are fine on their own, and if they really look inward, they'll find that, like, oh, okay, maybe I would be most happy on my own. Like, I think,
God, I wish I was one of those people.
Yeah,
really
I think there's some people that kind of begrudgingly need connection with others, like I think you do.
Yeah.
But I think there literally are, some human beings that could live like the orangutan and just, kind of chill out. And if they come across someone, it's like, oh, okay, fair enough. But it's like, yeah, they want their space.
I feel like the likelihood of that, just biologically speaking, is very low, which is why people like that are considered outcasts.
Sure.
People who genuinely enjoy the company of themselves. Now, mind you, if I'm going to be honest about myself, I tend to be at my happiest when I'm alone. And I realize that at the same time, I could be just as happy around the company of people who I'm comfortable being myself around, instead of having to do it when no one else is looking. But most of the time, I do enjoy being alone.
You and I are not far off in that respect. I'm fascinated by people. I love people.
Okay.
And there is, I get a lot of pleasure of interacting with people and being around, but there's also a big part of me that's just like,
fuck off and leave me alone.
Yeah, like fuck off and let me do like I want to do my work, or I want to, like, sit in silence or meditate, or whatever I have to do. It's just living is very noisy.
Can we talk about how much time do I have with you on this one-on-one?
Hey, as long as you have, man.
Let me. I want to talk quickly about meditation and how it refers, because I know you're not the most interested in dreams, but I'm telling you, man, the shit is.
Oh, I love dreams.
Nuts.
Yeah.
You love what? I used to not drive to that kind of shit.
Look, here's the thing. I think you and I disagree on like, okay, you have a dream or a reoccurring dream, like, and I don't know if this is your position. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your position is that, like, your dreams will always be speaking to something true.
No, okay. Not always. But what I will say is that one thing that I've learned that I don't think is necessarily unique to me is that your dreams will tell you some shit about yourself that you might not either think about or want to think about when you're awake. Your unconscious brain will do that. Believe me. And one of the things that I have started doing, because I used to think that it was all bullshit, you know, being maybe a bit more skeptical than necessary.
Right.
But I have started meditating. Just taking time at night to just lay with my eyes closed in a neutral position and just examine my existence. You know?
I think that's
from head
great.
to toe.
Yeah.
And, well, for the sake of lucid dreaming, which is why I'm doing it, last night seems to suggest that it actually had an effect. Now, I went from basically counting from 1 to 600, because when you talk about noise, one thing that I've learned that makes my dream so discombobulated is the fact that my head is a very noisy place. Now, obviously, for someone who doesn't have dreams, their head probably isn't a very noisy place. They probably don't have 1,000 things that they're thinking about over the course of one day.
Right.
But for someone like me, my head is very noisy. I'm constantly running through thoughts every day. And what I've realized is that if I want the kind of dreams that I want, I've got to calm some of that noise. Now, I know that the initial meditation video that I came across, when I finally realized that maybe trying to do it myself wasn't the best way to do it, since I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, was all about clearing your head. And I don't necessarily think that that's necessary in my case. I completely understand it, because one thing that I have noticed is that the more active your head is before you fall asleep, the longer it takes to fall asleep. You kind of got to let your brain turn off.
Yeah.
And meditation can absolutely be good for that. But I'm afraid to meditate during the day, especially while I'm driving.
Don't meditate while driving.
Don't do that. But I think meditation, it can almost make a bad day better. When you take the time to just take a deep breath and let all the shit that bother you during the day, just let it vaporize.
Right.
So I've definitely seen the utility of meditation, even though if you would have asked me a year ago, I would have gone, it sounds like bullshit to me.
Yeah, some people just don't they don't get it. They're like what do you mean? You sit there still and quiet? It's like but it's more to do with your starting to recognize your thinking and how thoughts are emerging, you know. Yeah.
It's a great way to get, I hate to sound like a fucking 1960s hippie, but it's a great way to get in tune with yourself, you know?
Yeah, no, it totally is. And yes, you did sound like a hippie, 100%.
Great. Fuck me.
Aaron the hippie.
But,
I never thought I'd say it.
Don't get your hopes up. And I'm gonna tell you something. A dream I had two nights ago, and it wasn't even the entire dream, but it was a section of the dream at the very end, put me in a good mood all day yesterday.
That's awesome.
Which is something that doesn't normally happen to me. But this is what I'm telling you. Dreams can have that effect. They can put you in a good mood. They can put you in a bad mood. Depends on if you let them. And that's what I've been focusing most of my attention on. Because who knows? Maybe, you know, I hosted a party in my dreams recently, which is something I would never do.
Interesting. What was the party? What was the party like?
Well, there were games, there were people there, and I just went through room to room, just checking on people, seeing how they were doing. I wasn't even involved in it. I was just the one who organized it and made sure that it kept going smoothly.
Right.
And then people left, and I'm like, damn, I got a lot of shit to clean up. All these empty bottles and all this other shit I got to clean up, but that was definitely worth it.
If you were planning a party, would you be in that role? Like, would you be the organizer, or would you be like kind of the greeter? Like,
Let me give you a
yeah.
Let me give you an example that will answer your question perfectly. At this point in my life, if I'm going to go to, say, a music concert, let's say there's a heavy metal concert. If I'm going to go to that concert, it's going to be because I'm the one performing. If I go to a party, it's going to be because I'm the one who planned it. I'd rather be the leader in that case than the follower. I'm not just going to be the greeter. I'm going to be the person who planned the shit.
Right.
Because I just don't like having to. I don't like having to, especially in voluntary cases meant for enjoyment, having to follow other people's rules. I'd rather just do my own thing.
Yeah,
So.
I hear you.
Could you sound any less interested?
Sorry, I'm just banning this person that's spamming the fucking YouTube chat.
Nice.
So tell me more about your lucid dreaming. I know we've spoken about it a little bit, but what is that like for you?
Wait. Okay. So basically, God, how much detail do you want me to get into? Because I've been doing this shit for 9 months. Okay. I'm just gonna warn you, it gets pretty deep.
All right.
Okay.
I'm strapped in. I'm ready.
You better. Let's start at the beginning. So, as far back as I can remember, I've had a very active imagination, thanks to my parents. Because when my mother's not being a piece of shit, she's a weird person. Like, weird in a good way. They're both silly, and they both have active imaginations, which is why I have them. And it translates into my dreams. There have been maybe over the course of the, I want to say 22, 23 years that I've been, dreaming at night, dreams that I can remember. There have maybe been, 10 instances where I haven't had a dream at all. So for the longest time, I didn't really care. Dreaming is just a thing that happened at night.
Right.
But something happened last year, around this time, that finally made me decide to change that. And that was, there are certain kinds of dreams that I have that I don't really like. One of them is related to jump scares. I'm sure you know what those are. The 2007 bullshit YouTube, scary noise out of nowhere type dreams.
Oh, okay.
And I had one last year that was based around an anime. And they typically have the same type of setup where things seem a bit awkward, a bit weird, and then bam, jump scare not even out of nowhere. It's like it's set up. And this happened to me last year. And it used to be that when I lived with my parents, because of the stresses of living with them, I would have specifically these kinds of dreams all of the goddamn time. Constantly. And I would wake up from those dreams trembling, heart pounding, and it would take me like 30 minutes to calm myself down again before I could go back to sleep. Because I'd wake up in the middle of the night. Now, as I got older and I finally left my parents, not only did they start happening less frequently, but it took me less and less time to calm down enough to go back to sleep. To the point where at first I would sit awake for like 10 minutes, just staring off in the ceiling, trying to calm myself down. So where the end, I just go right back to sleep again. I'm just like, God damn it, man, whatever. But something happened last year that changed all that, and it's what I call the process. So after the last jump scare dream I had, which is what I call the anime jump scare dream, because there was anime characters doing it, it would get to a point where over the last couple of years, there would be longer and longer pauses in between dreams with a jump scare in them. And it would get to the point where when I felt like I was due for one, I would start to get a little nervous because I don't like having those dreams. Well, on June 18th of last year, when I was in a hotel room, which made me even more nervous because that waking up, knowing that you're in a room alone, tends to make it worse. Like when I have jump scare dreams in the truck, I'm like, well, I'm surrounded by people, so it's fine. That's the one time that being in the company of other people actually has a benefit for me in that regard. But laying in that bed that night, it had been a couple months since the last time I had one. And I'm like, man, I'm probably overdue. But because this is before I started taking antidepressants, something in my brain just broke. And I said, hold the fucking phone. Why is it that the one place where I should be able to do what I want, I'm sitting here worried about having dreams I don't want. The one place where I could be in full control of what happens, and I'm sitting here worried about a dream that I don't want to have. What? So from that night on, I decided, fuck this shit. I'm not allowing it. I'm not going to allow it. Now, what it started off was me basically wanting to eliminate those kinds of dreams altogether. Because it isn't just that. It's jump scares. It's any dream where there's tension, be that because of sounds that are being made, because of visuals, such as being in a dimly lit room, arguing or getting into physical altercations with people, running from people, or running from other objects, or being in neighborhoods or being in areas that just make me feel tense, usually associated with being in the ghettos, right? Boarded up houses and
right.
shit falling apart, because in my experience, those places are usually associated with places where people don't have a lot to lose and they're usually not the brightest, so they automatically jump to violence to deal with everything. And that was my experience. So anytime I would have a dream about a place like that, there would be this tension. Like, I'd always be worried that something would happen. Of course, there's the dreams with my parents involved, where I'm yelling at them or trying to fight them or kill them or some shit.
Right.
And then, of course, the big ones were the ones where I was either being ignored, excluded from something, or rejected. Just rejected outright by a group of people. So those are the four main categories. So I basically wanted to eliminate those dreams and said, why can't my dreams be the place for me to have exactly what I want every single fucking time? Well, I can tell you that over the course of the last 9 months, what that actually transformed into and wound up actually being was not so much necessarily eliminating those dreams, but changing how I react to those dreams. And I shit you not, because the first 3 dreams I had, the 18th, 19th, and 20th, I wrote them down. And here lately, I've been recording them on my tablet.
Huh.
The third dream that I had, I could already tell by the end of the dream that there was a setup for a jump scare happening. Because it was the same type of shit that happens every time, where someone was calling my name over and over again, and I was responding to them. And by the end, I started to get annoyed. Don't ask me how, but for some reason, some part of my brain was able to sense that it was about to be a jump scare, and I shit you not, I woke myself up.
Interesting.
And by the way, that isn't the last time that happened.
Right. So you're in control. So you feel in control of your dreams, where you, previously felt like you didn't have any control, and you were like, why am I? You're kind of like, why am I submitting to this when there must, like, you were convinced that there must be a way for you to control them, or else you wouldn't have gotten to this place.
I wouldn't have bothered.
Now, right. a lot of people don't go through that process. They don't think like, oh, I could control this. They just say like, dreams are dreams, and they're going to happen, and sometimes they're going to be, crazy or happy or sad, or but they're just dreams, I wonder if I would be able to do that, because dreams, I think I have probably the typical experience where, okay, I'm having a dream, and if it's a bad dream, I'll eventually wake up, but while I'm in the dream, I feel like I don't have control.
Well, and that's where the lucid dreaming part comes in, because what I would say is that things have evolved. Once upon a time, I was a pure passenger, completely not in control of whatever was happening in the dream.
Mm-hmm.
And over the last couple of years, and especially since I started this process, it's gotten to the point where in every single dream I have, I'm talking, behaving, and reacting to things exactly as I would if I was actually awake and actually there.
Interesting.
And every once in a while, and actually a lot more frequently than I thought I would, I'll break through and be fully aware of what's happening. And it's at those points that I'm actually fully lucid. And I'll never forget the one dream that I had where I was hanging off of a bridge. Like, the big arches that connect the bridge?
Yeah.
Like it was one of those bridges where it was just that one piece of metal that makes an arch. I was dangling off of that. I looked down and saw how far off the ground I was. And because there wasn't much else happening other than me just dangling on this bridge, something in me went, wait a second. I'm asleep right now. And you know what that means? That means I can do what the fuck I want. I jumped off that bridge and flew away. I shit you not.
That's cool.
Because flying, when I go lucid in a dream, flying is one of the first things I go to. And basically what I'm trying to do right now is the dream yesterday, a dream 2 nights ago, where I wasn't even lucid, put me in a good mood. And it wasn't the first one to do that. And my theory is, if I can have dreams like that, maybe not necessarily every night, just to keep them novel, but more times than not, that in and of itself might be therapy, right? That in and of itself might put me not only in a better mood, but in a better mental state to try those kinds of things. Like even something as simple as being in a party or being in a group of people or going on a date or having a girlfriend, which is all things I've, dealt with in my dreams. Right. Having enough of those experiences be as real as possible could probably be therapy. Now, let me tell you, because that particular dream I'm talking about, that's where something surreal happened. Because this has been a long, ongoing process. And it's been a fight. Sometimes I have exactly what I want, or somewhat what I want. Other times I don't. But in that particular dream, I flew away. I touched down somewhere else. And I took the time, because I was still lucid at that point, I took the time to just take a step back and just examine. Examine my hands, examine my feet. I was wearing white shoes, which I wouldn't normally wear.
Right.
And I even took the time to run my hand across my head. And I shit you not, I felt my hair. So even though I was fast asleep, it felt like I was really standing on that sidewalk. That it was actually me. Like I wasn't just, a thought, an idea, that I was a physical being standing there.
And do you do you sleep well?
Typically? Yes. Yeah. Yes. And that's the one thing that my friend Brad was telling me about. Is like, you better make sure that, that this isn't harming your ability to actually get sleep. But I'm like, no. Right. I wake up just fine. My brain is so active that this is just what happens. But so this is what I've been trying to do. I can tell you.
Oh, you're roboting a bit there.
I'm much more. I might not necessarily be in control of what I dream about from start to finish. Although I think my meditation, now that I know how to do it, might change that. But I'm definitely in control of how things progress.
Interesting.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah. Okay.
I title my dreams because one of the things that, if you're going to go down the road of trying to take control of your dreams, one thing you absolutely have to do is start keeping track of your dreams. Because the more you start thinking about them, the easier it'll be to start realizing you're dreaming when you're dreaming. Now, I had a dream about a week, 2 weeks ago. Started off pretty normal. Now, there used to be a time where if someone was chasing me, I'd just fucking run. And of course, it's that typical thing where you feel like you're in fucking molasses. But ever since I started this process, I'm like, I'm not running from anybody or anything. So shit happened in the dream, but the end of the dream is where shit got interesting. A bully is chasing me. And instead of me running away, well, I am technically trying to avoid the confrontation. But at some point, I'm like, fuck this bullshit. And uppercut him. Disappears. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is what happens after that. And if you want any indication that I have a fucked up head, the last sequence of that dream is proof of that. When I shit you not, it's a song that's taking place, it's a lyric video that's taking place on this nasty sport. And I don't remember all of the lyrics, but I do remember at one point the person was singing, "Cut my heart out and use it as a pillow."
Yikes.
I know that might sound dirty, but I'll go up in flames. And when they said the word flames, it was like the intro to a heavy metal song where they suddenly started screaming. I realized right away that it was supposed to be a jump scare. And as I'm sitting there watching it, I'm going, nope, not going to work. And I woke up from that dream and went, I did it. I recognized that a jump scare was happening. And instead of being afraid of it, I just said, no, not going to work. But then, shortly after that, I'm like, I kind of like where that was going. I'm kind of disappointed that my brain instead decided to try and scare me awake again. I wanted to see where else that song was going.
Right.
So, and even the dream I had last night, you remember how I was talking about how places, like desolate places with dilapidated, boarded up shit, make me feel uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Well, for some reason, last night, in the second dream I had, I was walking through one of these places, having already gone lucid again, kind of forcing myself to go lucid again, going, you see that? You see that house with all that broken shit that's boarded up? I'm not bothered by that. How about that one over there that's completely boarded up? I'm not bothered by that either. I'm not bothered by any of the people I see going past. I'm not bothered by any of the looks that they're giving me. I'm not bothered by any of this shit. And I woke up from that going, see, that's a sign that we've made progress. It's not necessarily about stopping those things from happening. Because unfortunately, until I am lucid dreaming every night, and I'm not in control of a dream from start to finish, this is what's going to happen. But it's about the ability to not be bothered by what's happening and actively say, because this is the first time I ever did it, I'm not bothered by this. I see what you're trying to do, and it doesn't bother me.
Interesting. So from a practical standpoint, do you think this, would you say that this has improved your well-being?
It hasn't happened enough, but if it's helping me fight my demons, so yes.
So, yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, I think when you mentioned your friend talking to you about your sleep, as long as it's not getting in the way of you being able to enjoy a good night's sleep, I think it's it's cool. I mean, you're not the first person I've talked to that's very interested in their dreams, right? And what's going on. So they're
weird. It's a strange place, I tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one thing I can add is, I have this place I go to, I've been traveling to ever since I was as long as I can remember, that I go to in my dreams, and it still happens to me, where I recognize everything as though it's like the back of my own hand. Everything's so familiar to me. Even I can't call them people. I'm not sure they're people, but all of these things that are there are so familiar to me. One thing I'm pretty sure I know who they all are, and I even the texture and the way things feel in the dream, like it all feels so familiar. But as I sit here talking to you right now, I couldn't describe to you a single detail of this place. Those details only come to me when I am in the dream and everything's familiar again, or at least I have that feeling of it. But yeah, and I mean, it was about a week ago I was there again, and I woke up, I knew I was there. I tried to remember details and I tried writing them down, but I just sat there clueless with, pen in hand, trying to remember even the simplest detail of what I was doing or anything about the environment. And every time I think I remember something correctly, I'll be like, oh yeah, I remember something orange. My brain's just like, no, that's not right. So yeah, and I don't. There is something interesting where I do have this feeling of being at home in that dream. I do have this sense of feeling like, oh, I'm home again, which is very strange because I can't describe what that thing is. But there is something very calming and relaxing about being in that whatever or wherever I go in that particular dream. There's something very calming about that. But yeah, this has been happening for as long as I can remember, ever since I was little.
By the way, I'm looking at the YouTube comments. People do not like this topic. Not that I give a shit. I didn't know that you were going live with this, but I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about. If people don't like it,
no, I can see. Problem. I can see. Mace is quite triggered. Don't keep track of your dreams. You could spend your lifetime so much more productively.
Hey, don't give a damn what other people think.
Mace, I've written some great songs that were purely based on dreams.
There you go.
I think your cynicism towards dream tracking and, having conversations about dreams. I mean, these are conversations about, they're phenomenological conversations. There's an entire, realm of philosophy dedicated to this. I think
it's the same thing with video games.
Well, I mean, any
immersion.
Yeah, I mean, like talking about any thoughts or anything our minds are doing. Yeah, I don't know why there's so much, cynicism towards discussing.
It's probably because
dreams.
It's me. It's probably because it's me. Let's just be real.
Do you and Mace have beef or what?
I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, that's what I've been focusing most of my attention on. I mean, think about it. The mere fact, what's my favorite dream? Shit. Boy, I've had so many. Actually, you know what? No, I know what my favorite dream is. There's this picture of a black goth chick that I have, and I've given her the fake persona. Yeah. I've given her the fake persona of being a British woman with a British accent. Any dream that I've had, I didn't even have to see her, although I've studied her picture enough to where I can actually see her and be her the entire time consistently.
Interesting.
But my favorite dreams are the ones where she's talking to me in her British accent. Something in me just feels so happy at that moment. It doesn't have to go any further than that. It's just to hear her have the exact voice that I wanted her to have, and for it to be so upbeat and cheery.
Right.
It's just like, holy shit, man. This just goes to show what your dreams can do for you. It's nuts.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my favorite.
Yeah, that's I gotta move this guy. Yeah, I'll put him there. Okay, cool. And do you in this is this a woman that while you're in that dream state, are you in love with her? Are you
yes.
sexually attracted to her?
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. And when you dream of her, does that actualize itself in your real life that you might want to get out there and start dating?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That's why I said that.
Right.
Because one of the things that I read is your dreams can be a place for you to have a safe environment to put yourself in situations that you might not put yourself in otherwise, and practice how you would deal with those situations.
Right.
So a lot of people who lucid dream can use those lucid dreams to practice their interview.
Right.
Or practice their fucking... Wet dreams are great, but I haven't had one since I was a kid. or practice their music.
Right.
Whatever it is that you want to do, but maybe might be hesitant to do, you can absolutely take time in your dreams to practice those things in a safe environment. Now, obviously, and this is where things get a little weird for me, is that I still want a level of real, because, dreams can get fucking weird, man. Like, all types of weird shit.
So I just want to address, one of Mace's comments here. So Mace says, this is pointless. You're literally just telling us fantasy stories that you wrote while half asleep and not thinking logically. That's what art is, motherfucker.
Also, that's not what I'm doing.
Mace, you should jump into the jump into the voice chat because I think what you're describing, Mace, is like one way to approach art. How can you see that as pointless?
Also, you assume I'm not thinking logically. Believe it or not, that's precisely what I've been saying. And the dreams I've been having lately, I have been thinking logically.
Yeah.
And the way those dreams progress actually changes because of that. So I don't know what you're hating on.
Yeah.
But, everybody has their thing. And for me, especially these last 9 months, dreams have definitely been my thing.
I want to hear what Mace dreams of.
I don't think Mace cares about his dreams, to be honest.
But I mean, like, does he dream? Some people don't dream, right? They just like, just like dreaming. What the fuck's that?
Yeah, it basically, and like I said, I've had at least 10 instances of that in my life where it's like, I go to sleep and nothing.
Yeah.
It's not that I can't recall what happened. It's that nothing happens.
Right. Hey, I have a question for you. If the like U.S. Army, say World War III, or World War III broke out. It feels weird saying World War III. I don't know why. But if World War III broke out, would you want to go and fight?
Hell no.
No?
Absolutely not. Fuck that noise.
What if it would it change if it was against, like, someone similar to Hitler, like someone more like, if you knew that there was mass genocide happening and things like that, would that make you want to go to war and fight, or
nope.
do you not have that in you?
Nope.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't like having to defend myself, to be honest with you. So no, I'm not killing other human beings for someone else's cause. Absolutely fucking not.
What about your own moral cause? Like if someone was doing something? No.
It's not that serious. Sorry.
I'm just trying to think of like a time where it would be serious enough.
As far as I'm concerned, it'll never be serious.
If you got if you got
downside of existentialism.
Right. If you got drafted, would you just refuse to go and take jail instead? Okay, fair enough.
Yep. And the other thing I've said is, you draft me to a war and put a gun in my hand, I'm starting that shit on myself. I ain't doing it. Period. Not doing it. The war is, at this point in human civilization, as far as I'm concerned, war is fucking pointless. We're never going to progress as a species to do the kinds of shit that Kurzgesagt, for instance, wants us to do, but we're going to war over stupid shit. Sorry, not sorry.
I'm just trying to figure out what you would consider to be like not stupid shit to go over war. Like if we saw like all of a sudden Russians lining up children in long lines and just putting bullets in their head, like there's a certain line for me where I'm like, okay, yep, time to strap it up. It's wartime, where I would definitely feel like I wanted to contribute, not simply just in a, war of ideas way like I do here, but I would also, I would want to, whatever the military would think I would be most useful, whether they think I would be most useful, on the ground, at the front line, or, as a tactician, like whatever they thought I would want to give my services.
Well, I hate to be that guy, but I just don't think that way.
Yeah,
I just don't.
What do you guys? So Jeffrey D'Amato says I would totally re-up if there was a real war. What do you guys think, Mace? Would you strap those boots on? What about you, Frog? Traversable? Let me know in the comment section. I'm interested to hear. Yeah, I mean, I would just say like I want to serve, um, I want to serve my moral foundation, right? So if it was a senseless war that had no that my moral foundation was not against, like I couldn't find anything bad with what was going on to justify it, then I couldn't do it. But if I think war does become morally justified after a certain point, and you want to you want to engage in that war. Like World War II is a good example, but you want to engage in that war in a way where you want to shield innocence as much as you can, which can be very difficult, right? We're seeing that, there are claims that that's what's happening in the Ukraine right now. Like, the Russians are trying to shield innocence, but, yeah, it's a tough thing to do, right?
Well, I agree with Mace. Offensive war is always unjustified. I 100% agree with that. My thing is that, to me, war in general isn't justified. We didn't develop over the eons. We didn't evolve to have these communication skills to go fighting with each other. Because, of course, at first I was thinking, well, maybe if there's a shortage of resources, you could almost say that perhaps that might be a decent justification for war. No, because as long as there's a diplomatic, even if people will never actually implement it, as long as there's a diplomatic way
Right.
to deal with our issues,
Yeah.
I'll hear nothing else.
Well, I feel the exact same way, to be honest. I feel that, I'm going to drop Doolittle into this with us because he's mentioning, hey, Doolittle, what's up? Check. We might not have Doolittle here.
Did you just move me in?
I did, yes. So yeah, we're just talking about, like, when war seems to be morally justified to us as individuals, would you strap up? Would you give your services to the military? And my answer is yes. Aaron seems to be kind of on the no side of that, and it sounds like you would want to re-up because, I mean, you're a vet, right?
Yeah, I'm a veteran,
yeah.
And to no small degree, I feel like people, especially able-bodied men, have some sort of duty to their country. I don't think it's the highest, like, so I know we've talked about, our moral foundations, and part of my moral foundation is I see our privileges and our rights and our duties as sort of a series of contracts. And one of the contracts that you have with your country is that if you're an able-bodied man, or woman of fighting age, and there's a real reason where you have to defend the population that you're claiming to be a part of, you have a duty to put yourself on the line for the people around you. And and the question is, what are the criteria that where let's just say there's an actual threat from outside,
right?
That makes it significant enough to sacrifice a good number of years of your life,
and potentially
for that cause,
life.
or potentially your whole life, right?
Yeah.
So you have a contract with your family to protect them, and you have a contract with your neighbors to do, certain amounts of civic duty.
Yeah.
And then you have a contract with your government to, maybe put your life on the line under certain circumstances, so that the whole population can survive and thrive in the long run.
Right. So I kind of see it as more of I have an obligation to my morality. Because it's of course, like, my government could be doing something tyrannical, right? And I, that's where I would say, like, well, my morality will actually be my barometer into whether I believe this to be justified or not. So I think I have to engage in my moral calculus. So that's kind of at the fundamental basis of it. If like for instance, if I got drafted by my government into a war that I disagreed with, I would not fight. I would take the jail sentence. But diplomacy has just folded. There's no opportunity for it. There's that hand's been played, and of course, I think for the most part that's not the case in war, and we can do a much better job at being, diplomatic. And if we aren't getting our way, to restructure deals and to keep working at it. But yeah, it's that's tough.
Yeah,
imagine being in a Russian
soldiers.
Imagine being in a Russian soldier situation right now that you really don't know what the fuck you're doing in the Ukraine, and you have.
Well, let me say this.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly that point of view. I joined the military in a time of peace.
Right.
In 1998 was when I signed my first contract, and the military helped me pay for college.
Mm-hmm.
And and there was a promise of training in my chosen career field, which I got, and I'm thankful for that. And then war came around, on September 11th, 2001. When I was in, I had just graduated from college, and I was in my in my officer training school when the World Trade Centers got bombed, and clearly we were at war, like, at that moment, right? Like there was no declaration of war by Congress, but everyone that was in the military knew, okay, yeah, now we're at war, and we're doing the thing that we knew we might have to do. Yeah. And everybody gladly and willingly went and did their duty to do what the generals thought was right to protect the homeland, right? From future things like that. And at some point in my career, something like 5 or 6 years later, we had gotten to the point where the continuation of the war wasn't really moral, right? Like, so I was, I was on duty on an aircraft carrier when the last real combat mission was flown over Iraq, and the last plane that was deployed on a combat mission landed, and we left, and it, that might have been a little, it's tricky to say, should we have gone, like, was that justified? Should we have gone into Iraq? But the point is that we were kind of at war, and it's not really clear, but at some point it became clear that the continuing war wasn't really morally justified, and that was a big part of the reason why I left, right? So
right.
I would have, if we were at war with a real enemy that wanted to kill us still, in 2007 and a half, when I left the military, probably wouldn't have left. I probably would have stayed in.
Right.
But the moral justification for war was gone. Like we did what we had to strike back at the people who were actually striking at us, and maybe we struck a little too far, which I can forgive to some extent. I don't, I think there's a lot of things went wrong with the Iraq part of the war, but I'm not sure if there's an alternate universe where, given perfect information, the same decisions wouldn't have been made.
Right.
May I ask a question, by the way?
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
Is this supposed to be a one-on-one with you and me, or you and Doolittle?
Oh,
I'm a little
no,
confused now.
I pulled Doolittle in because he was commenting, and I wanted to get his take on the war question.
Yeah. So think about it from the perspective of a soldier that is they joined the Russian military to, whatever their reason was, they're hungry. They don't have any other job. They want to get training in a craft, in a skill. They want to serve their country out of patriotism, and then a war starts, right? And like how does the war start? I don't know. It's not really up to the soldier to decide that. And they find themselves in a fight, and they do their best to fight for their country. And at some point, if their moral foundation doesn't justify what they're doing, they're gonna stop fighting so hard, and second, they're gonna start leaving.
Right.
Well, I have a pet peeve with people, especially Americans. Now, I just want it on the record. I do not like my country. Matter of fact, I fucking hate it. It's a pile of shit. Lies, smoke and mirrors. Motherfuckers say that they care about each other when they really don't. But when people tell me, "Oh, you have a civic duty," fuck you. I don't have a civic duty for fucking shit. Okay? I did not ask to be born. So don't go trying to place all these retarded ass obligations. Oh, you have an obligation to defend your country. No, the fuck I don't. Okay? And by the way, you're going to tell me that I have a duty to defend the same country that's responsible for all of my fucking mental issues? Get the fuck out of here.
So
I don't have a civic duty to do a fucking thing. And by the way, maybe that wouldn't be such a big deal if I didn't think this country was such a pile of fucking shit. Maybe I'd be more willing to defend this country if I felt like this country stood for something other than fucking lies.
So civic duty in the sense of
sorry.
No, it's okay. The civic duty in the sense of like, oh, okay, if you get drafted and you refuse, they'll throw you in prison, right?
Throw me in prison. I don't give a fuck.
Right. So I think when someone's talking about like, civic duty to defend, I think that's what they're more talking about. But I hear you. Like if you find yourself in a situation where you don't like the country you are living in or that you were born in, and you don't trust them, and you have problems with how things operate, it's like, yeah, you're not going to feel inclined to want to defend that country. However, you might feel inclined to want to defend loved ones, or based on your own merits, right?
Well, and by the way, on the civic duty thing, it's the same thing with, first of all, as an existentialist, I find this all fucking stupid. But setting that aside, just had to throw that out there. But it's the same thing when I finally got my first order for jury duty. I'm like, the fact that you could get in trouble for doing something that most people don't want to do is fucking stupid. But at the same time, I understand why they have to do it the way they do it. If they give you the option, there would never be. You would never get a jury. So I get it. And on that same hand, I can understand how 99% of people, I'm willing to say, if you gave them the option to go to war, most of them wouldn't take it. And then your country be fucked. So I get that. But at the same time, I think the difference between the two is one of them serves the purpose, whereas the other one is just like, look, man, first of all, this country thinks it's the bastion of peace. It absolutely fucking isn't. I'm not even going to go into all the illegal offensive wars that we've started and how much unrest we've caused in other countries. So for us to think that it's okay for us to fuck this country. But
Aaron, let me respond just a little bit.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to imply that I think you have a civic duty to go to war, but I think that there are something like 10% of people that are born with something physical, mental, and genetic in their bodies, in their mindset, in the way that they do things, that they are the kind of people who will run towards a fire instead of away from it.
Well, that's fair.
And if you're one of those people, right, then then when there's a real war and there's a real threat to the people that you're part of, if you see of yourself as part of the collective, if you're one of those people, like everybody has a role, right? But the role that I was born with, the gifts that I was given in terms of physicality, leadership qualities, mindset, like if there's a war, I'm the guy that needs to be on the front line. I need to be at the pointy end of the spear, or at least volunteer to be at the pointy end of the spear. And if I can find my way into an important role, then that's my duty. I was born with a certain set of skills where I can do these things. Other people are born with skills where they can think about how dark matter affects gravitational fields.
I was born with a certain set of skills.
You were born with a certain set of skills. You were born with a certain predisposition to be good at certain things. And when you find the thing that you're good at, when you find what you were made for, then when that thing is really needed, like failing to answer that call, I think is a moral failing.
I don't give a shit. Flying fuck.
And maybe you are, everyone's an individual, right? So I'm not saying everyone has ownership of their self. So I'm not saying that you have to volunteer, but to me, it worked out pretty well for me the way that my life went. So I'm kind of
well. That's great, happy. But let me tell you about me. One thing that always gets me is I recently watched a video of how a giant cruise ship is made. And the entire time I'm sitting there watching this, because it's obviously a time lapse, I'm going, wow. You see what human beings are capable of when we're not fighting with each other over stupid shit? I'm just saying. We do better when we cooperate, right. Not when we're fighting. When the fuck are human beings going to get over this fucking boner that we have for war? When is it going to happen? Because I understand that it's not going to happen right now. But when is it going to happen?
I think there is a line. I think we're close.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying I think we're close to that. It's once you start getting... Once the quality of life gets... The general quality of life of your nation gets to a point where you feel as though it's really worth losing. Like that's kind of what's happened with Western nations. I think there's a line once your country generally steps over that country tends to be focused way more on like improving on what we have here, as opposed to looking outwards to be like, okay, let's what are some ways we can expand without pissing off too many enemies, in that it leads to our destruction.
I can also tell you that one way it'll happen is when human beings finally wake up and realize that, splitting ourselves off into these stupid tribes. That, I'm a Chinese person, or I'm from Saudi Arabia, and I'm the best. When we get over that might be when the human race as a whole can finally start to work together. But I also will say this. It's because I know so much about the shit that America's gotten up to, where we think that everybody else is a terrorist, but when we do it, it's okay, and I'm just not going to fall for that bullshit. But if unprovoked, because the thing is that I would love for America to reduce its military budget, use some of that money to help its citizens. But the one thing I would worry about is you weaken the American military. I would not be surprised if some of the people that we've bullied over the last 200 years finally go, right, now it's time to get our revenge. But setting that aside, if the United States was attacked unprovoked, meaning we didn't do something to deserve it, then at that point, yes, you put me on the front lines, I will do the best I can to try to defend it. Only if it's unprovoked, and only if it's purely for the sake of defense. No other reason. I'm not fighting in your stupid offensive wars to get oil from fucking Venezuela. It ain't gonna happen. Fuck you. Greedy motherfuckers. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I don't like wars for resources, and I know I'm sitting on the shoulders of giants who have had to do that to be able to come up with what I have now. But you know, I simply want to see us maximizing each other's well-being, and this includes country to country. You know, mutually beneficial trade and people not being bullied into giving up too much where it affects the well-being of their citizens.
Here's the one thing I've said about the progressive left. I don't think that a lot of the things that the extremists ask for are necessarily dumb. Like the open borders. That's my go-to example. Open borders isn't stupid just as a concept. It's impossible right now. And this is one of the things that I've really had to just accept, that we are still cavemen, and we still act like cavemen most of the time. We still act mostly on instinct. And naturally, having these completely arbitrary, asinine lines around. But at some point in human history, I would like for it to not be a case where, oh, well, you're not allowed to cross this line. Like a bunch of fucking kids talking about some get out of my room. You know? This territorial nonsense. I'd like to think that at some point, as we become less and less violent and our survival is more and more assured to where we don't have to worry about those kinds of things, that we can start finally dropping these stupid barriers. And that open. But the difference is the progressives want it now, whereas I don't see that happening for another 200-300 years, if that. So I want human beings to get to the point where we're all getting along and we're all working together. Because frankly, I don't see how we're going to do the kind of shit we want to do if we don't. Now, maybe you don't need a global effort to get done the kind of shit that humanity wants to get done. But you can't completely erase the idea that we'd certainly get there faster if we weren't bickering over stupid shit. Like, oh, I don't like your flag, or your people do things that are weird to me. Look here, motherfucker. No one has the answers. Get over it. Sorry, I'm ranting a lot. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good, man.
No, it's a good rant.
So, that's my thoughts on war. Can we just get past this shit, please? Because you say that people in the past had to do it. Well, I would say the only reason they had to do it is because they didn't know any better.
Yeah.
We didn't have to go to war for resources. We could have just said, all right, how many people do you have? How many people do you have? And how can we split this shit up to make sure everybody gets at least something? But no.
Yeah. I mean, nations have done that. Some nations have done that in the past. But, yeah, sometimes just ideologically there's too many disagreements, right? And religions, the difference of religious belief has played a big role in
don't get me started on that shit.
Of having these irreconcilable differences.
Yeah, I think it's not even Aaron, I think part of the problem is that human beings are animals. Animals are living. Everything that's living has a tendency to grow to exceed the size of the box that contains it.
Yes.
And so that means that over a long period of time, if you do find some way of peace and prosperity, then everybody grows until really the resources aren't there for everybody. And there's different ideas for what the correct way is to orderly assign resources out. And when there's a difference in opinion on how to, there's always going to be some kind of power struggle in terms of okay, who gets to decide how the next parcel of land is distributed out, for example. And it's, and this kind of thing is eventually always going to come to something where there's two different wills that have different opinions over how to do something, and the only way, I don't know, maybe it's a lack of imagination, but the only way is to fight it out in one manner or another. Like whether the manner of fighting it out is killing each other with tanks, or maybe the manner of fighting it out is imposing economic sanctions on the people that disagree with you on what economic system or what monetary transfer system should be used. There's always going to be some forms of people fighting for control over what's unfortunately a limited amount of territory on and productive assets that happen to occupy the earth. So,
well, look, I understand that war is inevitable. That doesn't mean I'm going to accept it. And by the way, Travis talks about a difference of ideas. I don't even think that's the problem. I think a difference of ideas can be healthy. It's when people are more interested in calling each other fucking names and ridiculing people for having differences of opinion, that's where it becomes a problem. Like, you would rather, instead of being open-minded to listening to someone other than your fucking self, you would rather spend your time insulting someone else for having a difference of opinion. It's to the point now where you can't even present facts anymore without people just assuming that you're trying to push your own fucking narrative. And there's a couple people in this fucking YouTube chat who are guilty of this shit. They know who they are. Because they're blocked right now. Because the thing is that
blocked, right?
You present facts, and you present an interpretation of those facts, and the first thing people jump to is, oh, it's just you.
Right.
How the fuck are we ever going to get anywhere? We can't even have diplomatic talks when people respond with immature shit like that. It's like, I'm sorry, but my philosophy is this. Nature had lemons, and nature made cherry limeade, okay? Nature gave us, I'm glad somebody caught that. Nature gave us these brains, gave us the ability to cooperate, to communicate. I am not, for however long I live and however much more of humanity I can see, I am not going to simply say, this is the best we can do. No, I don't want to hear it. Because I've seen too many examples of humans being fucking exceptional. The things that we're able to do when we're not getting bogged down by stupid shit, I mean shit that once upon a time probably was necessary, but these days just fucking isn't. War, the ad hominem attacks over differences of opinion, and the worst one, going to war over some fucking sky daddy. It's like, the things we can do, and I hate to, because Brian Regan made a funny joke once where he was like, you could put it's the scapegoat. If you could put a man on the moon, but you can't make a fucking phone cord that doesn't tangle. It's like, we can put people on the fucking moon, but we're having arguments over sky daddies. Come on. And obviously you could say that, well, you're going to have both. And I'm like, yes. But again, part of not simply being complacent with where humanity is saying, but think about how much more potential we could be taking advantage of if we weren't having wars over mystical sky daddies.
Do you think
I am not ever going to settle I'm never going to settle for where we are, because I know what humanity is capable of.
Do you think war has served as some good, like, for human motivation? Like, there's few things that motivate human beings better than an enemy force on your doorstep.
It's the saddest part of human beings, in my opinion.
Sure, but do you think that any of these things that have been born out of war, would you rather not have them, or would you say, like, we shouldn't, we can't rely on war, or we can't rely on fear as a motivator? Because if we look at fear as a motivator, war is going to be very high on that scale, right?
Well, look, begrudgingly, I'll admit, who knows what America would look like had we not got involved in World War II. I will admit that it's possible that we could have spent way more decades in the Great Depression had we not joined World War II. Because, at least according to what I've been told, World War II kind of saved America's economy. But for right now, while we are still creatures that act mostly on instinct, fear is the ultimate motivator. Fear is probably what motivates us to look at these stars, to see what's out there, to learn more about ourselves. All I'm saying is, I hope we get to a point where we don't have to use fear as our primary motivator. But violence, quote unquote, from violence and from chaos, nature seems to find balance. The solar system was a very chaotic place in its earliest stages. But now, it's pretty stable. It's pretty, orderly, shall we say. So, I'd be willing to not be so anti-war if I knew that every time a war happened, peace would follow. The fact that we're on the brink of World War III, and we haven't learned our lesson from World War II.
Well, I think,
and what did World War II really accomplish?
I think most of humanity has learned their lesson about world wars and after World War II. I think others are, I think Russia's willing to go there if necessary, and most of the world is not where it does not share that attitude. So
who is it in the Darth Thomas and MLG Frog talking about it, they're killing Putin? Look, again, in my philosophy, it all comes back down to what are your goals? Do you want peace among the nations? Well, one way or the other, you got to send a message to a nation like Russia that will go to war for what I think most people in most Western and most even Eastern countries would consider to be stupid shit. You got to send a message to say, look, we are trying to move on as a species, and you're stuck in our old ways. We're not going to tolerate that shit, whatever that looks like.
Yeah,
because I
agree with you that we want to get ahead of things like this before they escalate into, keep it to thousands of deaths as opposed to millions of deaths, right? Or then, even worse, tens of millions of deaths.
Can I point out that this Russia-Ukraine war, I just want to reframe it a little bit for you.
Sure.
This is actually a Russian civil war that Russia just simply wasn't strong enough to finish at the time that their country broke apart. So if like for example, in 1860, when the South broke off from America and they decided they're going to be their own country, the war was immediate. It came right away. We had a civil war. They fought it out. Turns out that performatively, countries, states don't have the right to secede from a union in America.
Maybe they should.
Now, what happened with the breakup of the Soviet Union is that they were a union, and yeah, maybe they should. Hey, I've made that argument many times, but in the breakup of the Soviet Union, a number of the member states of the Soviet Union declared independence. They broke up. They said, "Okay, we're our own thing now," and the military conflict that arises from said breakup is still kind of, I would like you to be able to see it as an extension of it's just one big long civil war until everybody figures out what all the new borders are going to be, and everybody agrees what the rules of engagement are. It's kind of like it's kind of a civil war, and that's a big part of the reason why America's mostly staying out of it.
America needs to mind their own fucking business regardless.
Yeah, and I don't know what the right
sticking their nose in everybody else's affairs. How about that?
Right, and NATO. I think NATO should stay out of it, and I think, there's a small subset of people that want to be independent. I'll acknowledge that, and I think it would be better.
Well, then go to fucking Russia then.
I think it would be better if people could stay relatively independent in terms of the distribution of power. So I'm not. I think as I grow older, I realize that the bigger an empire is, probably the worse for the people that are in it. So probably, I would be happier if there was a good Ukraine where there was no corruption going on in the government, and they had something like a democracy like what we have, and all the other states as well, and you got NATO that's kind of a big empire that's pushing east, right? And they keep breaking off another piece of Russia and trying to get them to go join NATO. And that's not really good for Russia's sovereignty either. It's not really good for the people that joined that federation to say, well, maybe we should just let NATO break us apart piece by piece until we're gone. So it's not an easy thing to get in the middle of, and I think it's just like one big civil war that started with the breakup of the Soviet Union, and probably it sucks for the people that are in it, and we should provide humanitarian aid, absolutely. But picking a side, I don't think that's going to end well. I don't think it's going to end well to pick a side in a civil war.
Well, let me say this.
So those arguments you just made, Doolittle,
okay.
Isn't that the same arguments that were being made with regards to Poland and Germany?
You mean the World War II?
Sure. A lot of what you just said about this is really a civil war. That's
This
is the same attitude, right?
Yeah, and I think that when Hitler was invading the mostly Germanic parts of Poland and Austria and Hungary, there was a case to be made to say this is a gray area and maybe they should be taking that. And then when they started pushing west, into the Sudetenland, maybe we could make a case to say, well, actually, yeah, that was kind of part of Germany just like only 20 years ago. And then when they started pushing into France, it was pretty clear that, so Germany attacking France was not in the gray area. Germany bombing Britain was not in the gray area.
Sure. Yeah.
When Britain's army was retreating from Europe, and they were getting bombed, and the whole thing where they had to go across the English Channel on fishing boats.
Mm-hmm.
That whole situation made it obvious that no, there's no these guys are not just trying to take what they think is theirs. They're trying to expand. So Russia, like at this point, we're still in the gray area. We're more like in the area where, yeah, the first German push into Poland, where they had people that were ethnic Germans that were maybe they can make a case for that.
So
all right, well, I want to ask a question here.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I mean, obviously, my hatred towards Russia is just a reaction to my hatred towards people in general. But if I'm going to set my own personal biases aside, the question that I would ask is, was this unprovoked? Did Ukraine do something to actually warrant this? Because if this was unprovoked, fuck Russia. I don't give a fuck what you think I don't give a fuck if this is a civil war or not. I don't fucking care.
Yeah,
If they didn't do anything to deserve this, then fuck Russia. Period.
Yeah, so I don't think it was unprovoked.
Well, I want to see the facts.
Yeah. Now,
if Ukraine did something to deserve this, then it's a different conversation.
Well, not Ukraine. The question is, who did the provocation? Not whether there was provocation. And is the response to said provocation justifiable? So there clearly was provocation. Since the breakup of the Soviet Union, Russia has had to struggle quite violently in a lot of circumstances to maintain its federation and to maintain sovereignty over its own borders. And NATO and the U.S., which largely leads NATO, has been marching eastward slowly over the decades, to the point where we have missile systems at Russia's borders.
So regardless of the provocation, though, if the argument is we were provoked in a way where we felt like felt what like that they were in danger.
Yeah, so take for example the Cuban Missile Crisis that we had in the 60s under John F. Kennedy. I don't remember who the Soviet premier at the time was. Brezhnev, maybe. He started shipping short-range ballistic missiles with nuclear capabilities to Cuba, and there was a crisis where like people were considering first strikes and stuff like that and going to war, starting a full-on war with Russia, potentially nuclear, over the actions of Brezhnev or whoever it was at the time. If someone knows who it was, then you can post it in the chat or something. But I think it was
Travis,
Brezhnev.
what the fuck?
So if you Aaron in the chat.
Oh, okay. So if
trolling is a great way to lose my respect.
So they put nuclear capable ballistic missiles within range of striking our homeland. And that elicited a response which very nearly turned into a nuclear war, right? And it ended up getting diffused diplomatically, but it's an example of how we also don't accept people encroaching too much within our sphere of influence. So what's happening to Russia is they have now increasing threats from the West, which they don't consider to be allies. Right? The European Union, the NATO, they consider them to be at least rivals, and if not outright enemies. And more countries which were part of the Soviet Union that they kind of still think are their territory are getting broken off piece by piece, getting offered membership into an anti-Russian alliance. And Ukraine's the next one, and they said, you guys can't keep doing this, and otherwise we're going to do something about it. And then we kept doing it, and then they did something about it. So,
right?
Do we have to talk about this the whole time? Because I really don't want to talk about this.
We don't
Okay.
have to.
I'm tired of listening to people talk about war this and war that. I'm sick of it. I'm fucking sick
I
of
love your honesty, Aaron.
Fucking change the subject.
it. Like, I didn't want to talk about this to begin with, to be fair. Like, I'm sorry people in the fucking YouTube comments aren't necessarily interested in my talks about dreams, but
You know
fuck
what?
you.
There's a good.
I like your comments about dreams.
I do too.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Doolittle. Thanks, Doolittle.
Actually, just before Travis pulled me in here, I was in a dream state myself.
Yeah, I totally threw.
Are you mocking me?
No.
No, I'm describing a transitory state that I was in
Nice.
just prior to joining you guys.
All right, I'm gonna Doolittle. I'm gonna drop you back to the open discussion.
Cool. Yeah,
Thanks, man.
guys.
Yeah,
That was weird.
thanks to Doolittle, everyone. Drop a like if you're enjoying this stream. Very chill, laid back Sunday chat with my buddy Aaron.
Well,
is your last name Washington, by the way?
yes. I'm the one. I'm Aaron Washington in chat. That's me. Well, I'm sorry it's not going to be quite as chill because it's me,
Yeah, it's
and I'm not a chill person. I'm just not. Sorry, not sorry. One thing I wanted to talk about
Sure.
that was kind of because you said bring a topic.
Yeah.
The one topic that I wanted to talk about is, you know what? I'm just going to ignore people in the live chat. I don't have time for immaturity. For the immaturity of people in the fucking YouTube
They're gonna
comments.
if you give anyone who's trolling an inch, they're gonna take a mile.
They can take all the miles they want. I'm just not going to see them. So one of the things that I always come back to on just about any subject is parenting.
Yeah.
Because if Hitler had decent parents, I feel like there's a better chance he wouldn't have grown up to be the person. Same for Putin, same for Stalin, same for Trump. I think a lot of Trump's sensitivity comes from the fact that he was not raised well. And that's where a lot of mine comes from. Why? Look, this, I'm going to be the first to say I recognize that this might be a little loaded, but, well, so am I. I'm a truck driver. Why is it that you have to get a license to own a gun, but you can just have kids at will?
Yeah.
If we're going to be a modern civilization, that is.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, Aaron, I have to say about that. I am an advocate for parental testing, and I don't have the best method figured out of how we would do that, but we already do it to some degree, right? But we do it in this like feel things out way and wait for something bad to happen, as opposed to kind of getting like we'll say like read the baby books, read the parenting books, read what we know from a child psychology perspective. We do that, and we have this like passive way of keeping track to make sure parents aren't abusing their children. But what about having some like required courses or testing to be done that the government would have to pay for and provide, and we would have to figure out a way where it wouldn't cost people anything. But I think when you are going to become like when you adopt a child, look at all of the checks and balances that we go through when adopting a child. That people have to go through. Like they literally check every little bit of fucking thing about you. They check your financial status. They check all of this stuff to make sure that you're not some lunatic that they're putting a child into your hands. So what is our, what are we going to do to help parents to be more successful? What resources are we going to put into this? What kind of things are we going to mandate? With regards to parenting, I think these are good questions to wrestle with, and I think it's important. And I think we do it right. I think we do it right by the children who are in the system who are going to be adopted. We do right by them to make sure that we're not putting them in the hands of some fucking pedophile or psychopath. Or a person that's just like blindly optimistic about their resources, where they think that they have enough resources to take care of this child effectively, but really they don't. Like I'm happy to see the checks and balances that we have at that level, but I mean, for regular child rearing and, you know, people who get pregnant and have their own biological children, we seem to have this like, oh, let's see how it goes. And we kind of stop keeping an eye on things until we start maybe seeing behavior emerge in classrooms. And I don't know. Yeah, that's how I generally feel about it. But what do you think?
I have a simple solution. Right? The same meticulous screening process that takes place before you adopt a kid should take place in those critical weeks/months when your baby's in the hospital before you can actually take it home. While that, someone should come in and say, all right, now you've had a kid, but understand we need to do a detailed look into who you are, what you have, what you offer, what your mental state is.
Right.
And in the same way that we do it for when you adopt a kid. And if enough people go over the data that we collect on you and determine that you're not fit to be a parent, you're not taking this kid. I don't care if it's yours or not. If you're suffering from serious depression, if you have violent tendencies, if you make questionable financial choices, you're not taking this kid home. Period. And if you don't fucking like it, think about that before you open your goddamn legs. I don't think it's that difficult.
Or pull your cock out.
That too. But, you know, typically women are the ones who have all the control when it comes to sex. So keep your fucking legs closed and you won't have these issues half the time. Well, but that's the way I see it.
I look at these responsibilities equally up until the point of pregnancy where it ultimately is a woman's decision, right?
Yeah.
And but I think the other stuff, like, you know, this needs to be a mutual thing where, okay, if people are going to decide to look, I'm a sexually active guy out there in the dating world. It's like, not all the time do you have conversations before you have sex with someone about what happens if we accidentally get pregnant. You know, that just does not happen. It just doesn't. So it's like, yeah, you'll have a conversation of like, okay, whether you're on birth control, when's the last time either of you got tested? Like, these are good conversations to have. It's just people don't seem to want to have the conversation of like, okay, let's lay out a plan of what's going to happen if we get pregnant here.
I would say that most people who find themselves in that situation are too stupid and horny to think about what they're doing before they do it. But look, this is part of the reason why, if you ask me my opinions on abortion, yeah, I would say I'm not a woman, so I don't really feel like I have a qualification to speak. Because I don't care what people think the data says. If most women are getting abortions because they had kids that they don't want, why the fuck do men have any say in abortion? Well, when they're the ones who put women in these positions? You're not the one who has to carry the fucking child.
Well, men don't.
Shut your ass up.
So ideologically, men can weigh in and talk about this and share their ideas on the topic. But at the end of the day, the woman is the one that you know, the law states is going to be able to make this decision up to a certain point, and then we say they can't, right? And I think that's good. You know, we can't just have, you know, an unlimited. You can get an abortion 1 day before the original due date. Like, no, we're not going to allow that. And I think that's for good reason.
Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, unless you disagree.
I mean, look, I'm not, I don't know all the facts, so I don't really have much of an opinion on. I'm assuming that not allowing it after the third trimester is done for a reason. So, by the way, again, I want to call out something that was said in the YouTube comments.
Yeah.
The Science Ultimatum with Jason Torn, suggesting that this is a silly thing to discuss because it'll never happen. So because things don't seem possible now, we should just ignore them and be complacent then, right? Go fuck yourself.
What What will never happen? What was he saying?
Because talking about the vetting system, using the same vetting system for adoption for new parents.
Yeah, not this.
If you never talk about these things,
yeah,
you don't plant the seeds. Of course, they're never going to fucking happen.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say that, Jason, about many many restrictions we have now. It's like you know, it's like how many examples can we pull up of in the past we thought like, okay, before alcohol was outlawed, it's like, oh, alcohol gets outlawed. What are we gonna do? I can't believe my government thinks they can tell me I can't drink alcohol. There's a lot of things that we might be able to make change on with regards to parenting and parenting qualification. I don't see this as much of a stretch as you see it.
By the way, I'd also like to respond to Jeffrey, because I completely understand where he's coming from when he says he doesn't think it's ethical to dictate a child rearing strategy to people by force.
Right.
No, because that's oof. That could lead down a dark path. That's how you get people who are like, we need more white people in America. If you're black, you shouldn't be allowed to have a kid because it doesn't help. No, that's where that kind of shit comes from.
Yeah,
so it would only be if you could get enough people to agree on what, not even necessarily what the best way to raise a kid is, because in my experience, you don't always have to know what the right answer is to know what the wrong answers are.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could get enough people to agree on some standards of what bad child, of what red flags of a bad potential parent should be, and people exhibit those, that's when you go, because we want society to be a kinder, gentler place, we're not going to take the risk of allowing you to rear this child. Not going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, and people have to understand that they understand that this does happen, right? Like a crackhead will give birth, and sometimes that baby will not be released to that mother. Like this does happen. So people shouldn't
also,
be
there's something called DCFS.
Yeah, people shouldn't be so like, oh, I can't believe this would happen. Why would we even talk about such a thing? This happens already. What are you talking about? We already make this determination in some cases that this person doesn't meet these qualifications. And what would it have meant if we tested the person in some way, and we were able to deem at maybe when they were 1 or 2 weeks pregnant that they would not be allowed to keep the child until they sorted out certain things. They might choose to actually abort as opposed to carry the child to term. So, I mean,
it applies to literally almost every single other thing that you want to do. You have to have a license to drive a car. You have to have a license to carry a gun, at least in the state of Illinois. You have to have a license to do just about fucking everything. But in the context of a so-called civil society, any old person can just go and have a kid. When everyone tells you that having a kid is a huge fucking responsibility, and we complain, and everybody wants to fucking protect kids. Save the kids, save the kids. Why does that have to stop just because you're talking about the people who have the fucking kids? If you care about kids and you want the best for them, then you're going to keep them from being raised by people who have no fucking business raising a goddamn kid. It's not difficult, people. We can talk about the ethics of how you go about doing that, and that is a worthwhile discussion.
Yeah, I agree.
But again, if we're trying to make society better, whatever that looks like, and one of the ways we think to do that is to protect kids from bad things, unnecessarily bad things, sometimes parents are those unnecessarily bad things. Sorry.
Yeah, and like I said, we do step in and do this already, right?
Yeah, hell, DCFS was called on my parents. Fucking, I went to school with a black eye in 8th grade. Now, does that sound like people who have business raising kids?
Yeah, my favorite.
I can talk about my own experiences now. My parents should never have had me. That's just the bottom goddamn line. And they did a shit job of raising me. Now, if we had gone through my system, and they had me when they were fucking 20 years old. Now, if we had gone through my system, where they were vetted once my mother was pregnant, somebody would have said, "There's no fucking way you're raising this kid. Absolutely not." And maybe I wouldn't have been so fucked up in the head. I'm just saying, a lot of the unnecessary stuff diminished. It all starts with parenting and with being raised in the conditions that you're raised in. Now, me personally, I take it to the extreme and go, if North Koreans are suffering so much, why the fuck do they keep having kids?
Right.
If the South Side is so bad, why the fuck do y'all keep having kids? Why do you keep bringing more people into this thing that you know that you think is bad? Why do you keep bringing more people into it? It's one of the reasons why I didn't want to have kids when it came to climate change, because I'm sitting here going, like, I don't think there's a lot of kids. Don't think I could ever justify why I would bring another human being onto this planet to suffer through the effects of climate change against their will, without them having any say in it.
Right. Here, let me bring in Jason Torn from the chat. Just wants to defend his position. Jason, yeah, you're live. Go ahead, man.
Oh, sorry.
No worries.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so actually, I don't think we do prevent people from having children. We take children away from parents who do a poor job of raising those children. But in what instances do we actually say these two people cannot have children? I mean, there may be very rare situations where somebody has a developmental disability. And even in those situations, I'm not quite sure if we do that.
Yeah,
so,
I know what you're.
I never suggested we do that.
I think you're saying, like, so even if, like, there's an incestual couple, like, and the female gets pregnant, I think incest is illegal. So we'll say, like, oh, okay, this is illegal and you're going to be charged, but they're not going to, like, abort the pregnancy on her behalf.
Oh, we don't, and we don't say we're going to prevent people from having children. If let's say a brother and a sister, like, use the most ridiculous, example. A brother and a sister are planning on having a child, and the government finds out about that. Is the government have the ability to step in and say, we forbid you from having that child, and we're going to take measures to prevent that, or we come out and make an edict that says that we forbid you from having a child.
Yeah. So right now, right now they can't forbid it, but maybe, like, here's something to think about like genetic engineering. Maybe there will be something in the future where, children aren't born to eventually become fertile. Like, they'll have to, like, get a government approved pill or something to become fertile. Now, some people are scared. Some people are terrified of living in a world like that. I'm not so terrified of it. I'm not like this person who's also afraid of, like, a large amount of surveillance that may feel like an invasion of privacy on citizens in order to keep people safe from, people who are wanting to do terrible things, right?
Yeah, I think that there are situations where government, I'm using government as an example, but that the controlling body has some responsibility based on societal needs to put certain guidelines, rules, whatever in place. However, I think that this particular topic of preventing certain people from having children, or to say you must pass a certain test to have a child, I think that's a very slippery slope, and I think that I would agree.
I just acknowledge that.
Well, I'm not. Look, I'm just making my point. You were the one that came out and said that you think there should be a license to prevent people from being married. Is that correct, or did you not say that?
No.
Well, okay.
I said you need a license to purchase
Right.
a firearm,
Right.
but yet in the context of a modern society where we're trying to teach people to not be assholes, any old person could just go out and have kids.
Right. But
That's
wait
what
a
I don't
second.
get.
I thought that the whole premise of what you guys are discussing is that you were in approval of the fact that we should be limiting certain people from having children.
Yes.
Correct.
Look,
Okay.
if you're strung out on drugs and you go and have a kid,
Okay. So what I'm saying
you tell
is,
me how that's going to end.
okay, well, here's what I'm saying. I'm saying that I would agree in concept that you can look at certain people and say, I don't think that as a whole it's appropriate for these people to have children. But when you start to put rules in place that say, look, we're going to set up a set of rules, and I'm not saying you're saying this, I'm just making a position on my own, making my own statement, that going down that road of doing that is very dangerous. And it starts to get into situations of, well, then who are the people that can and can't have children? It smacks of like eugenics in some sense to me, that we're like, certain people are just not allowed to have children because they're not smart enough or they have different viewpoints.
Yeah. I think we would have to draw, if we were ever going to do this, we would have to be able to demonstrate that they will almost certainly be in their current state, like we're taking the model of like, okay, the crackhead has the baby and then they don't send the baby with the crackhead. How do we implement a system where we're able to measure the abilities of that crackhead mother and tell them beforehand that we are not going to we do that. Let's think about that, because we do that to a certain degree. We will say like, okay, if you do have this baby, you know that you're not going to be able to keep it, right? And some
Sure.
mothers say like, oh, fine, I'll still have it and it can be put up for adoption.
Sure.
So we do that. Now, the extra step would be to say, if you don't meet this certain criteria, you cannot lawfully have a child. Now, what would that criteria be? So we would say, I think it's more about parenting. You can't be a parent if these things in your life are in a certain state. But yeah, if we're talking about like preventing people from having a baby, that's going to be seems like it's going to be impossible unless you do unless you do forced abortions.
That's exactly right. And I would agree with you. There is a problem in that area of certain people having children when they shouldn't have children. I think that going down that road of saying certain people shouldn't have children and we should limit them from having children opens up a Pandora's box of issues that make issues worse. But one way of maybe addressing it, and I mentioned it in the chat, is we just have a poor education system. We have and instead of attacking this kind of like an individual perspective, from a societal perspective, you're like, well, if we improve our educational system, we inject more money, we have more, at least in America, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but we have a shitty education system, that as a whole raises the bar to where, we start to have people that are making better decisions for parenting, but trying to kind of draw the line to say certain people shouldn't have children, and there needs to be guidelines or rules to prevent those kinds of people from having children. I don't think that's the solution.
All right.
That's my take.
Well, if you were listening to what I said, I already came up with the solution of how you avoid the slippery slope. But clearly,
why don't you repeat it for me?
Thoughts to hear that.
Why don't you repeat it for me? Because you said "fuck you" beforehand. So clearly you're not really interested in having an objective discussion. I didn't say fuck. Well, I didn't say fuck you to you, did I?
Let's try to be kind.
But I said fuck you to you.
Okay, well then, who's the reasonable person in this discussion then?
I've already given the example of how you would do this, that you clearly weren't fucking listening to.
Why don't you repeat it?
In the same way that there's a huge, I'm assuming it's a fairly detailed vetting system before you can adopt a child. Right, Travis?
Oh yeah. It's
Yeah.
very robust. Yeah.
And you could probably say that there are Tim West. Yes, it absolutely would be hard to put in process fairly. Although, if the process used to vet somebody before they adopt a child is based on, it has to be based on a certain set of values, right? So
Yeah.
if we can get enough people in a country to agree on what those values should be, again, this is where it probably never would happen, to be fair to you. But if you could get enough people in America to agree on at least what a bad parent looks like, then we could use that as the metric by which we test every single person who has a kid and says, if you meet these criteria, society has agreed that you are not fit to be a parent.
Well, I thought previously you were saying that you didn't think that you were saying, hey, I'm not saying that there should be regulations on who can have a child or not. But it sounds like
I didn't say there'd be regulations on who. Again, let me fucking talk.
Hey man,
I never. Can I talk, please?
Yes.
I never once suggested that you should be buttoning down and kind of doing what China did with their one child policy. Although you could kind of understand why they did that, to be fair. I'm not saying that you should be going through sterilizing people. What I'm saying is, when you get pregnant, that's when that vetting process should start. And I even said that once your child is born, and those what is it, months that it spends in the hospital before you can take it home, which I'm assuming happens every time. Someone goes, all right, someone whose job it is to do this goes, all right, we're gonna run you through this process, and we're gonna ask you some questions, and it's gonna be over the course of the next couple of weeks. It's kind of like a counseling thing, right? Where you're just talking to them about things. Like, we want to know who you are to the best of our knowledge, at least for the time being, because you can't predict the future. Shit happens. Can't save everything. Can't save everything. But we're gonna vet you, and based upon the information that we receive from you about your perspectives on things, the kinds of decisions you make, and it's not just going to be one person, by the way. That information is going to be passed around to a couple people. And if it's determined, based upon the standards that society has set, that you're not fit to be a parent, that kid that you just gave birth to that's laying in that hospital right now, yeah, not going to happen. Until you either change your ways and we see that you're genuine about it, or someone comes to adopt them. Not going to happen. That's what I'm suggesting.
So I think, I can see a way for us to do that where, okay, upon first checkup about the pregnancy, because we're not always going to know when people are pregnant, right? Sometimes people get pregnant and they seek no care and it's all natural, man. Actually, Bruce, in our Discord server, I believe he delivered his last child at home. Like he performed the delivery on his wife. That's quite incredible. Wow. But that takes balls, man. But yeah, so okay, if the government or if hospitals, they see reasonable justification to inquire into the well-being of this to-be mother, what does that look like? How are we going to make sure that process isn't bias? Those are things we would have to sort out, I think.
Well, again, that's why, and the most ideal, because the rules that we have that are law, are clearly based on some set of standards that most people, I imagine, agree. Now, obviously, you can't please everybody, okay? And no system is 100% airtight, bulletproof. The shit just doesn't happen. But the laws that we have in place right now, especially the ones meant to protect people, are clearly based on some collective agreement about, quote unquote, how things should be. And we hire representatives that agree with that to make these laws. All I'm saying is the same thing could apply to setting standards for, or setting the rules for who can and cannot keep their kids. Now, I know it may sound authoritarian to say that.
Yeah.
But again, if the purpose is to keep kids from suffering unnecessary trauma at the hands of people who would otherwise probably have those kids taken away to begin with, why not prevent it before it? Why not stop it before it happens instead of waiting for that child to be abused before you
pre-crime.
go and step in?
Yeah,
it's like Minority Report.
Yeah, that's the thing we would want to keep away from. We would always want to give people the, we don't want to charge people for ideas of crime, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
like obviously.
Well, that literally didn't say that.
No, I'm not saying you said that.
Go through a detailed vetting process.
I'm not saying you said that, Aaron. I'm just talking.
Well, but wait a second. But what you're saying is essentially that we have a vetting process. Let's say that for two parents that are going to have a child, to vet them for their ability to raise the child that they're having before they make any mistakes. So they haven't actually done anything wrong. They could be, but it could be a crack mom that by the time she's maybe she's cleaning herself up. I mean, I'm using maybe there could be a situation where she's on crack, she's got the child's physically impaired while within the mom, and that's a problem. And I think that government services recognize that, and they do interject in those situations. But if you just have a parent, let's just make an assumption they're not on drugs, but maybe they're just not. They're going to be brought into a household, let's say, doesn't have a lot of money. Both parents don't have a job. Parents aren't necessarily capable intellectually of taking care of the children. Let's say they're really young. They're like 18 or 19. What we're going to say is we're going to evaluate them. And if we make an assessment that we don't think they have the capability of raising that child, that we're going to step in. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, obviously, in the example you gave about the crackhead mother trying to clean herself up,
sure,
if that's something that's expressly stated and able to be proven,
they get taken away from the kid.
I don't really see why you would take it. I mean, for all you know, that kid could be the reason why that mother gets her shit together.
Sure,
but,
totally.
And mind you, the 18, 19-year-olds.
Yeah.
Look, like I said, I base this off of our goals. And if our goals are to, have a peaceful society, unless you have some data that proves that stupid teenagers are capable of being responsible parents, you cannot continue. At some point, you've got to stop rewarding the dumb decisions that people make.
Look, I'm not disagreeing.
If you don't even have a job, you don't have any direction in your life, and you're going to go off and have a fucking kid. How do you think that's going to end?
Okay, I hear what you're saying. I think that you're making good points, but the problem is that we're stepping in on a particular situation where those parents may be great parents, even though they're young and even though they're not able to take care of that kid. It may be that the dad straightens up and gets a job, they raise that child amazingly well. In other situations, that may not be the case, but we're penalizing the parents that will take good care of those children. And
no, we're not. No, we're not.
Well,
it's not. Look, that's probably something I should have specified. This isn't going to be based off first impressions. That's why I said that this isn't going to be a one-day thing. Okay, if you're going to do this right, you're going to do it over the course of time. You're going to have detailed discussions about where they're planning on going. It's like, look, you're about to have a kid. What are you going to do if you don't have a job right now, what are you going to do for work? Because the thing is, not every kid has to be raised by millionaires, okay? My parents didn't have a lot of money. Well, and I turned out all right.
Most parents don't.
It doesn't have to be this authoritarian. We think that you're never going to do anything with your life, therefore look, it's not going to be that fucking simple.
Authoritarianism is and it's a really bold word. However, it's always it's very slippery. It eases in, and before you know it, there are authoritarian aspects that come into societies. I think that you mean well on what you're talking about. I just think that that mechanism is not a good mechanism, and that there are other ways of doing it that will be beneficial for society, and that what you're talking about, I think, has detrimental aspects that are hard maybe to see on the surface, but that are more pervasive. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
And
that's
I'm not,
why I try to avoid that by suggesting that no one person comes up with these standards, that these are standards that America collectively comes up with.
Oh my God, we barely can make decisions right now, like on, and I'm pro-life. I'm in favor of women's reproductive rights. We can't even argue. We can't even make decisions in America on 24 weeks, 15 weeks. We can't. I mean, we struggle with these other issues. I find it hard to believe that this would be a viable solution, that even if it was a viable solution, whether it would be beneficial in the long run. I think we'd just be better off taking more indirect mechanisms to improve parenting, and I think that would be better.
Look, all I'm saying is, one of the things that makes no sense to me about it. Well, I can't say that because I know the reason why, but one of the worst things, in my opinion, about human beings is the fact that many times we wait. Everybody loves to say hindsight is 20/20. Yeah, but foresight's a thing too, you know. I'm just saying. Now, look, I get it. You can't get two people to agree on just about anything these days. I understand that. And I'm not necessarily saying that this is something that would be implemented tomorrow. I'm simply throwing out an idea for how you get fewer abused kids that turn into adults that hate everybody and want the world to burn. That's all I'm doing.
I would be more in favor of most people who have children go through some type of parenting course, or have they're given more education when they learn that they're going to be having a child. When my wife and I had a child, we obviously went through all the medical processes, but we also had went through a parenting class. And so, I mean, I could see there being some funding to make that stuff free, or making it very much more easy for parents to make better decisions on how they raise their children, what they need to do to bring a child into the world. I just think the setting limitations on things like that is a dangerous thing. Maybe dangerous is a bad word, but it's not a wise thing in my view. But I respect your opinion. I'm not attacking you. I'm attacking the viewpoint, and I'm saying that I respect your viewpoint.
Well, I apologize. I'm used to being the one attacked, especially fucking on Trav's Discord. People love to attack my character just because I bring up points that most people find uncomfortable. And it just gets tiresome after a while.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, and it's important to bring
up... You can't save stupid people.
I agree.
So my apologies.
I only came in here because you told us he said fuck you, but I know that you...
Well, because what you said was... Okay. This will never happen. It's like, asshole, if we don't talk about these things, nothing will ever get done.
Well, but my point is well taken, though, that I don't think it'll ever happen. Doesn't mean we can't talk about it, but I just don't think it's going to happen. And I did say I thought it was a silly topic, but I understand. Maybe I'll retract that. Maybe it's not a silly topic, but I still stand by the position. I don't think it's going to happen. But
all right, thanks.
It's not going to happen.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm going to drop off. Yeah, thank you.
But Travis, like I was saying, because it all goes back to, look. Even in as much as I hate kids, I fully understand that those first impressionable years where we're literally a sponge just soaking up everything, make or break you. If it's full of being rejected, feeling like you're not worth anything, shake off. If it can be shaken off at all.
I wish you could find a love for children.
Me hating kids isn't hurting anybody, Travis.
It hurts me.
Sorry to say it.
No, but
are you a child?
I don't know. Am I? No,
Fair enough.
but I don't know. I just get I think of my niece and nephew, and I think of kids in general, and I think kids are brilliant, and there's there's a lot to be. There's a lot of good to come out of interacting with children.
Nah, not worth it. Not worth it. But hey, to be fair, I am, brainstorming ways that we can, make kids suffer less. It's all about because you love to talk about the pleasure drive.
Yeah.
Right? increasing pleasure. Well, could you not then say that part of increasing pleasure is decreasing suffering?
Yeah, so I would say so my goal is to once we have a moral foundation that we can live with, that our pleasure drives can live with, I think we from there have to look at, okay, how can we maximize our moral pleasure drives and minimize falling into immoral pleasure drifts. And the reason why I don't use suffering is because suffering is just suffering, like we can like there's some things we can't, like if a subject says I am suffering, and we measure that subject and we say, we don't see any suffering. It's a problem. And then some people might say, well, if we turn that around and we say, well, the patient is saying they're not suffering and they feel well, we can actually measure and see if they actually are well. Because our pleasure drives, I would say our biology gives us this illusion of feeling well at times, where we then go in and look and we identify that the patient's suffering from X, even though they feel well. But sometimes patient will say, oh, I'm feeling unwell, and we'll go in and look and we'll say, oh, well, we can't find anything objectively that that is a problem. So let's talk about ideas. Let's talk about experience. I just think those two things are those categories are different, and that's kind of why I land on well-being as opposed to this idea of minimizing suffering. And I think living to maximize as opposed to living to minimize yields more fruitful results. As opposed to, and another.
Are you sure you're not just
another example would be like living, trying to minimize suffering, kind of thinking of, suffering avoidance, on alert for the next suffering that might be coming your way, trying to avoid that thing, as opposed to living, imagine maximizing your well-being. You're actually actively searching for things that are going to satisfy you, as opposed to, on alert for things that might be coming to make you suffer.
See, this is how I know that you're the glass half full person and I'm the glass half empty. This is how I can tell, because I look at it from this perspective. Very few chances for us to grow, to learn, to change came from when we do things right. Very few. We, at least in my experience, human beings do their best learning when shit goes wrong, right? And when you accept that some suffering is necessary, when I say suffering, I'm not just talking about suffering in general, because it's inevitable. When I say suffering, I'm talking about needless suffering that's manufactured by human beings. And that's why I say that we've made our lives so much more goddamn. It's not that we've made our lives easier, it's that the things that threaten us have gotten a lot more nuanced and not quite as obvious. So minimizing needless suffering is what I'm talking about. And for me, abusive parents is needless suffering, because there are other things that we could do to try to cut down on that. Now, obviously, to live all of your life, on high alert of the next thing, and I'm listening to myself when I say this, by the way, spending all your life just waiting for the next thing that's going to fuck you over may not be the best way to go about things. But at the very same time, I think it will be foolish to simply assume that life is all unicorns and rainbows. Because I don't think that's a realistic. People call me a pessimist. I'm not a pessimist. I look at both sides of the equation. Maybe I tend to look at the negative side more. But again, that's because there's very little to be learned from when things go right.
I disagree.
And partially, fair enough.
Yeah, I think when we're in this like survival mode, when things go wrong, when we're trying to avoid suffering, I think we're preoccupied with pain, suffering, the threat of death, and I think we will do incredible things. You're right that we'll do incredible things, like we'll build technologies, things that later became the internet, and we'll do incredible things to survive and to avoid suffering. But I think we do even greater things from a well-being perspective when we are no longer in suffering, when we're no longer afraid of war, and I'm talking more on the individual perspective, like when we feel as though things are good, and now it's basically the world is our oyster to do what we want with our time, which includes do whatever that may mean for collecting resources for your work, and what you do when you aren't working. I think we're thinking more survivalistically when we.
Yes, that's what I am.
And as opposed to like engaging in more abstract thinking and creating and really expanding the depths of what our minds can do. I think that more happens when not when we're held up against the ropes, but when we are well fed, shelter over our heads, no fear of death, at least imminent death. And we can really just think clearly about what our next steps are going to be.
Well, look, you're talking to someone who fully acknowledges that in an ideal universe, when automation replaces all these mundane jobs that we have to do, more people will necessarily have less concern about making ends meet when they know that their needs are going to be met, and survival isn't the most important thing on people's minds, which is probably why you don't have more great thinkers these days, because motherfuckers are too busy trying to keep the lights on, right?
Yeah. That is a problem. You know what? That is a brilliant comment and a real problem in intellectualism. People realizing that if they don't appeal to this neck of their audience, they're not going to be able to put bread on the table, and then the thinker turns into, a promoter of certain ideas as opposed to just thinking through. They're thinking through based on an additional metric. There's an additional level of calculus going on, as opposed to us getting to hear the fundamental views of the thinker. Like this is why I disconnect myself from politics in the way of, oh, okay, I guess you're in this camp now, hey. Like, it's like, no, it's like I don't belong to any camp, and I think it's a myth that you need to belong to a camp. You can just discuss political ideas as they come up, and you don't have to appeal to certain parts of your audience. Okay, yeah, sure, maybe you'll make a better living doing it that way, but I don't think that's a genuine way to go about thinking.
Well, it's funny you mention camps when it comes to politics, because you could definitely say that a lot of political discussion gets pretty intense. Anyway.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you caught that, right?
Yeah, I caught it. I'm with you.
Anyway, but at the same time, you got to look at the other side because survival is still a thing we have to worry about right now. So let me pose this question. Would we have the advances that we have in medicine if people did die suddenly and die for unknown reasons? Probably not, right?
Well, I think it helps for us to have, objects to measure. So if a human being dies, and we don't know what happened, and we have to go in and investigate, I mean, it's going to be very difficult to build models if you can't actually do the measurements and the investigations and then build demonstrable models out of that. That's going to be difficult, like very difficult. Part of like human biological medicine is better understanding how things are actually functioning, and sometimes this is like when we see cadaver studies. I often post in our medicine tab on the Discord this one YouTube channel that's really good. I'll have to look it up for everyone, but they show just how much you can learn by studying cadavers, and especially what you can learn about disease and how it functions.
We can even use a slightly less extreme example. Would cars be as safe as they are right now if people didn't get into accidents? I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't have any reason to build the technology or to improve on the technology, right? If it was
exactly.
Yeah, so yeah, the answer would be I think the answer is no to that. Like we if we don't have a reason, for instance, we don't have a technology that is going to defend us against fairies, right? Because we don't have, we don't have any.
Okay.
Well, we don't have any reason to build that technology, right? Maybe we will one day. Maybe we'll find that we really need a seatbelt for fairies. But I think, but it hasn't come up yet.
This is one of the reasons why, even though I wouldn't mind traveling to other places that, aren't America, I ain't getting no damn plane, because I'm a bit of an aviation nerd. I find planes fascinating. I'm not getting in one. And the reason why is because, first of all, the amount of the most minute things can bring a plane down. A fucking piece of tape has caused a plane to crash before, and that is not me exaggerating. But when you're dealing with something that is such a fucking gamble, all it takes is that, because people love to say, oh, airline travel is the safest form of travel there is. I'm like, first of all, that's probably only because the risk, the consequences if shit goes wrong could be so fucking catastrophic. Yeah. All it takes is that one thing, or that one combination of things, because there are so many goddamn moving parts on a plane. It's insane. Yeah. All it takes is that one thing or that one combination of factors that people didn't think about, and all of a sudden, you're the next one in the statistic of a fucking plane crash. That's all it takes. Maybe that's a negative way of looking at things, but under the philosophy of we typically don't make changes until something's already happened, I'm sorry, man. I ain't doing it.
Yeah, I mean, we do some amazing things to prevent. A great thing about science is that it makes predictions, right?
Right.
And that's and we couldn't ask for something better to give us predictions about things that we should be aware are on the horizon, or at least a potential threat to us. And I think I think science is brilliant for us in that way.
Science is king, queen, joker, and prince. And princess, God damn it.
Yeah, well,
and look,
you know, one of the reasons why I promote these celebrations of science and reason is because a lot of people don't realize or really know what science is. Like, they think science is like, oh, it's like, oh, now everyone's talking science because it's the popular thing to talk about. It's like, no, it's like science. You don't realize that, like, science is to think for, you know, the scientific method is what gives us everything. Like, literally everything. Like everything. Like, it's your shelter, it's your food, it's your, you know,
medicine.
We would be we would be fucked without such a method.
Well, this is how I look at it. This is how I look at it, right? I didn't mean to cut you off, by the way. It's hard to know when someone finishes their thought.
No, I know.
Fuck.
It's all good. I know you hate me.
I don't hate you, Travis. I hate some of the people who join your fucking Discord, and I'm sure they hate me, so I don't give a shit. Here's how I look at science. The difference between science and theology, right? Whereas theology makes claims that are unfalsifiable, to me, science is our way of saying, all right, we have ideas as to what the hell's going on around us, but instead of simply assuming that those ideas are right just because we came up with them, let's actually test the shit.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's where science really is something that even me as a skeptic that I can rely on, because it isn't people simply making bullshit claims.
Yeah.
These are statements that have been tested over and over and over again, to the point where even though sometimes I question whether our pattern-seeking brains could do science the justice it deserves, if fire burns every goddamn time to the point where fire not burning is the exception that proves the rule, I mean, I'm okay with that. Have I talked enough? I'm sure your audience is fucking tired of hearing it.
No, this is like,
oh, look at this angry black guy who tries to shock value. No, motherfuckers, it's not about shock value. I've built these opinions over the course of my life from the shit I've had to experience. I'm sorry if they're unorthodox.
It's not
sorry,
about
I'm not sorry.
Yeah, it's not about shock value, and it's also not about black.
Well, I just know somebody's gonna go, oh, look, fucking angry black guy, ha. It's like, fuck off. Anyway, have I talked enough?
No, I think this is a great place to end the discussion. But man, I have to say, like, you're fucking awesome. Like, I love talking to you. You're one of the people I look forward to talking to when I come into the Discord server. So, yeah, you're awesome, man.
Anyway.
All right. Well,
it was nice to finally have a chance to talk to you one-on-one.
Yeah. Well, let's head up. It looks like there's an open discussion happening just above us. I'm gonna let you go, Aaron. I'll drop you in there. But thanks, man. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Guys, Aaron Washington. What a guy. I love that, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this chill stream. I will definitely be clipping some moments out of this. Make sure you guys drop a comment once this live stream is published, and maybe outline your favorite favorite moment. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for stopping by. We'll see you on the next one. And as always, let art and science inspire.